At 3:07 a.m., Emily's phone lit the dark like a flare, and the message said, "We need to talk." Her heart tripped, then sprinted, then stalled as if the room lost its air. Emily said, "Daniel, please be awake," while the typing bubble came and vanished like a cruel tide. She stared past her reflection into the black window, listening to the radiator tick like a countdown. The clock on the stove blinked 3:07 again, as if time refused to move without permission. Daniel said, "Not now," and the words felt smaller than their distance, but sharper than glass. Emily said, "Is there someone there with you?" And she hated how the question trembled. The apartment hummed with the city's sleepless roar, but the phone was the true noise. She remembered the last promise, the one about October flights and warm coats and cinnamon air. Emily said, "Tell me if I should stop waiting," and the silence that followed was a verdict with no judge. A car turned the corner outside and didn't slow, and the taillights wrote a red scar across her wall. Daniel said, "It's complicated," and she realized complicated was just another word for alone. Morning arrived without consent, and the city pretended nothing happened while Emily brewed coffee with shaking hands. Her voice failed until she rehearsed it, then she said, "It was just a bad hour," as if words could undo the night. She scrolled their photos, a carousel of airports and promises cropped to smiles. Emily said, "You still want October," and the empty kitchen answered first. Her neighbor laughed through the wall, and the sound felt like a foreign language she used to know. She wore his hoodie because its fabric remembered a softer story than the messages did. Emily said, "I can be patient," and she hated bargaining with her own time. She opened the window to prove the air could move, and the street smelled like wet concrete and bakery steam. A calendar notification chirped, and it reminded her of flights she had not booked. Emily said, "Call me when you wake," and the sent status looked like hope across a thin wire. She stared at the door, picturing his car that never turned the corner. The cup cooled, and she realized warmth can leave quietly, without a fight. By noon the world demanded emails and meetings, but attention kept slipping like a coin through a grate. Emily said, "Confirm receipt," to a client, and the words felt robotic in a human mouth. She set her phone face down, but each vibration lifted her pulse like a trapdoor. Daniel said, "Busy at work, 4 hours late," and she tried to forgive a timizone that matched his silence. Her coworker asked if she was okay, and Emily smiled with rented teeth. She clicked through flights and compared prices as if math could fix love. Emily said, "I can make the second weekend," into the room, into no one. She remembered the last call where he laughed about a new teammate named Maya. Jealousy grew like ivy, slow, and then everywhere, rooting into thin cracks. Emily said, "Do you still want me there?" And the draft sat unsent, heavy as wet cloth. Her reflection in the laptop looked like a person who waits for a train that never stops. She closed the tab, because hope had become too expensive to price. Afternoon thinned into blue shadows, and Emily called her friend Lucas because truth sounded safer in his ear. Lucas said, "You keep rewriting the same ending," and she let the sentence bruise, then breathe. Emily said, "He is overwhelmed," and even she heard the fiction in it. Lucas said, "You are too, and you still show up," and the kindness hurt. They walked past storefronts that reflected them as two silhouettes trying not to vanish. Emily said, "What if I stop waiting?" and the words tasted like metal. Lucas said, "Then you start living," and the simple math shocked her. A florist misted roses, and the water fell like quiet applause she did not deserve yet. Emily said, "I need proof," and the sky answered with a long, unspecific gray. She imagined Daniel reading a message and putting it down for later that never arrives. Lucas said, "You deserve now," and she pocketed the line for emergencies. They reached her building, and the corner stayed empty, like a page refusing ink. Night pressed its forehead to the window again, and courage felt heavier after daylight. Emily drafted a message that began with kindness and ended with a question he could not dodge. Emily said, "Do I book the ticket or the goodbye?" and the cursor blinked like a metronome for grief. She checked his social feed, searching for new light in rooms she would never enter. A photo of a team dinner showed a woman near him, laughing with her hand on the table's edge. Emily said, "Maya seems nice," and the jealousy was a candle that ate oxygen. She backed away from the screen and touched the suitcase as if it were a sleeping thing. Emily said, "If you want me there, say it tonight," and the message hovered, unsent but alive. She pictured the drive to the airport and the weight of a gate that opens for no one. The radiator clicked, recording her impatience in Morse she could not translate. A siren passed, and the sound sliced the room into before and after. Emily hit send, and the room waited with her, all the way to the corner that stayed empty. Sunday light leaked through the blinds, and Emily woke with the weight of unanswered words pressing her ribs. She checked her phone, but Daniel's silence was a louder message than any notification. Emily said, maybe he just slept in, though she knew his mornings had already ended overseas. She padded across the apartment barefoot, every step echoing in the hush that felt like punishment. The coffee hissed and gurgled, but even the machine sounded tired of her waiting. She touched the suitcase in the corner and her fingers recoiled as if from fire. Emily said, "You promised October," and her own voice rang hollow, like rehearsed lines from a play. The calendar on the wall carried circles and hearts that now looked childish. She stared at the window, whispering, "One car, just one," and her breath fogged the glass. Outside, a jogger passed, headphones in, running toward something. She turned away, ashamed at how her life had narrowed to a corner that never changed. Emily tried distracting herself with laundry, but every folded shirt smelled faintly of airports and long hugs. She dropped one sweater, and it fell like a weight she couldn't carry. She remembered Daniel's voice once saying, "We'll make it through distance," and wondered if distance had swallowed him whole. She scrolled back to that old recording, playing it twice, holding the phone close like an amulet. The washing machine thumped, water rushing in waves, and she thought of oceans between them. Emily said, "I just need a call," and the machine groaned back. She tried writing in her journal, but the page filled with his name in shaky loops. Her pen broke mid-sentence, blue ink bleeding like a wound. Emily closed her eyes and whispered, "Don't vanish on me," but the apartment kept its steady silence. Outside, rain started again, thin lines tapping like impatient fingers against her window. She folded the sweater again, slower this time, as if delay could replace presence. By afternoon, Emily visited her parents for lunch, though their questions were sharper than hunger. Her mother said, "You waste too much waiting," and Emily smiled tight, hiding the bruise. Her father asked, "When is he visiting?" and the pause that followed answered more honestly than she could. Emily said, "October," her voice rehearsed but thinning. She picked at her food, though it tasted of memories she couldn't digest. Her younger sister teased, "He must be busy with someone else," and laughter cut her like glass. Emily excused herself, walking to the kitchen sink, gripping the counter until her knuckles blanched. She stared at family photos on the fridge, all smiling, unfractured. Emily whispered, "He is mine," though her voice broke on the last word. Her mother overheard and sighed, "You can't own absence." The house felt too small for her silence and their judgment. Emily left early, hugging her coat tighter as if armor against both family and truth. Later, Emily sat in a coffee shop with Lucas, the steam from his cup fogging her glasses as he leaned close. Lucas said, "You're clinging to a ghost," and she nearly spilled her drink. Emily said, "He loves me," and her conviction cracked mid-word. Lucas shook his head, saying, "Love isn't silence." The cafe buzzed with couples sharing pastries, and every laugh felt like an indictment. Emily traced circles on the table with her finger, pretending it was idle, though her skin burned. She remembered the night Daniel promised he'd always show up, and wondered if words expire. Lucas said, "You are worth showing up for," and his eyes did not blink. Emily said, "I can't let go yet," softer than the clatter of cups around them. She envied strangers holding hands in line, their distance only measured in inches. The barista called an order, and the name wasn't hers, but it jolted her as if it could have been. Evening fell, and Emily returned home with her chest full of questions heavier than her coat. She sat by the window again, the streetlights humming awake one by one. Emily whispered, "Daniel, just say something," and her voice fogged the glass. The phone buzzed at last, her pulse leaping, but it was only a delivery app notification. She laughed once, bitter and sharp, then covered her mouth. She scrolled Daniel's profile, seeing new comments from coworkers she didn't know. A woman named Maya left a joke, and he replied with laughter that was absent here. Emily said, "She doesn't know our history," but the jealousy clung tight. The radiator clicked, echoing her heartbeat in metallic Morse. She typed, "I miss you," but didn't send, staring at the blinking cursor. Outside, headlights curved the corner but kept going. Emily stayed by the window, waiting, as the city exhaled into night without him. Monday began with apologies that never arrived, and the subway stole her courage at each stop. Emily said, "I can hold it together," and the words felt rented and due back. Her inbox bloomed with tasks, while her chest carried one unpaid question. Daniel said, "Meetings stacked," and the text wore a suit of distance. She typed, "I just need 5 minutes," then deleted it because need looked messy. A photo from last winter surfaced, both of them grinning under a borrowed sky. Emily said, "We were easy then," and the memory pressed fingerprints on the glass of now. The city roared like it owed her nothing, which felt honest and cruel. A teammate on his feed tagged Maya, and they laughed in a caption she could not hear. Emily said, "Tell me this is still ours," but the room preferred silence. She tucked her phone away and felt it pulsing like a trapped bird. Outside, a bus exhaled and carried strangers toward certain destinations. At lunch, Emily ate beside the window as if sunlight could explain the silence. She read their old chats where love spoke in verbs, not placeholders. Daniel said, "We'll carve time," and she carved hours from her sleep to match him. Emily said, "Should I book Thursday?" and the cursor blinked like a dare. A reply arrived late, trimmed and careful about budgets and deadlines. She felt the word later slip a leash and run for the horizon. Maya posted a boomerang of clinking glasses, and his username sparkled below. Emily said, "Happy for you," to the screen, and the sentence tasted like smoke. The cafe clatter rose like a tide, and she imagined drowning politely. She pictured his hands busy with a life that never reached her. Emily said, "I am not furniture," and the declaration startled her into stillness. The check arrived, and she tipped well for kindness she could not offer herself. The afternoon meeting dragged, and every graph looked like a heart monitor flatlining. Her manager asked for timelines, and Emily said, "End of week," while her mind counted time zones. A message chimed from Daniel, 2 lines about fatigue and an early night. She stared at the timestamp and felt small, like a note in his margins. Emily said, "Can we schedule a call?" and drafted 3 options to make it easy. Minutes later he liked the message, which felt like applause for a play he skipped. Lucas pinged, "You okay?" and she almost said yes to save oxygen. Emily said, "I am holding," and the lie folded neatly into the chat. She imagined airport gates like mouths that only opened for certainty. The office lights hummed with the patience she had lost. Emily said, "Please choose me out loud," then highlighted and cut the sentence. The cursor blinked like a metronome syncing to nothing. After work she walked a long way home, because distance felt like the only honest language left. Storefronts blinked awake, while her hoop dimmed to pilot light. Emily said, "Call me when you land," though he was not traveling anywhere near her. A street musician played a song about leaving, and coins rang like little endings. She paused outside a boutique window and saw herself beside a mannequin that never waited. Daniel posted a team photo, and Maya stood near him with easy shoulders. Emily said, "Prove me wrong," to the glass, daring it to become a door. A car slowed at the corner and lifted her heart, then rolled past without a signal. She tasted metal, the flavor of bracing for impact, that never arrives. The sky bruised into blue-black, and streetlights confessed their tired halos. Emily said, "I am not built for maybe." And the wind took the words. She turned toward home, lighter and heavier at once. Back at the apartment, Emily opened a new note titled "Rules for Surviving Distance." She wrote, "No," checking after midnight, and crossed it out before the ink dried. Emily said, "Tell me the truth even if it ends us," and her voice surprised the room. She recorded an audio message and deleted it at the first tremor. The radiator clicked like cautious applause for boundaries she might not keep. A call from Daniel finally lit the screen, then slipped to mist as she froze. She stared at the red icon and felt grief arrive wearing relief's coat. Emily said, "Call back," and placed the phone face up like a witness. Outside, sirens stretched the night like taut wire. She pressed play on a voicemail that contained only background noise and a sigh. Emily said, "Choose me, or release me, into the quiet." The note saved itself, as if preparing to testify later. Tuesday morning cracked open with a headline she never wanted. Daniel tagged in a birthday post from Maya. Emily stared at the photo, his smile wide enough to erase oceans. She whispered, "You said no one else mattered," and the words crumbled in her throat. Her chest felt stitched with glass as she remembered him saying, "You're the only one I need." The post gathered hearts and comments, while her pulse broke rhythm. Emily said, "He owes me truth," though the mirror offered no defense. She thought of every morning she waited by the window, rehearsing patience as if it were a job. The distance suddenly looked less like geography, and more like betrayal. She scrolled through comments, each one a nail closing the lid. Emily whispered, "Don't let this be the twist," though deep down she knew the story had already been. She pressed her phone flat to the table, as if crushing the proof could erase it. By mid-morning, Emily confronted the screen again, this time drafting words sharp enough to cut. She typed, "Who is she?" then erased it, ashamed of sounding small. Daniel's reply finally landed, "Just a teammate. Don't overthink." The dismissive tone slapped harder than silence. Emily said, "I'm not overthinking, I'm drowning," though the words never left the draft. Lucas texted, "Call me," and she almost did, but shame tightened her fingers. She remembered every time Daniel said, "Trust me," and wondered when trust became a leash. Emily whispered, "You don't post laughter with strangers," but the room remained neutral. The radiator clicked like a skeptic, tallying her losses. She opened a suitcase again, then shut it hard, as if noise could cancel doubt. Emily said, "Say it's still us," but the typing bubble never appeared. That evening, Emily met Lucas at the park, leaves crunching like secrets underfoot. Lucas said, "He's playing both sides," and she wanted to protest but couldn't. Emily said, "Maybe I'm paranoid," yet her voice shook. Lucas stopped walking, his eyes steady, saying, "You deserve more than breadcrumbs." She hated that truth came easier from him than Daniel. Emily whispered, "But what if she's just a friend, clinging to the sliver?" Lucas said, "Friends don't make you question your worth." The wind carried children's laughter from a playground, mocking her hollow smile. She sat on a bench, head bowed, phone heavy in her lap. Emily said, "I've given years," and her breath clouded in the chill. The trees stood silent, impartial witnesses to her unraveling. Back at home, Emily opened her journal, pressing the pen so hard it tore the page. She wrote, "He lied," then scratched over the letters until paper burned. She whispered, "I trusted every word," and the silence echoed. Daniel messaged, "Stop being dramatic," and the cruelty landed like a fist. She typed, "Dramatic is waiting every night for someone who never arrives," but left it unsent. Her chest felt heavy with proof, yet her heart begged for denial. Emily said, "I am breaking," her voice brittle as glass. She looked at their old photo taped on the fridge, his arm around her shoulders, promises etched in smiles. The photo blurred as her eyes filled, ink smudging into tears. Emily whispered, "This was never supposed to be a ghost story," but the room agreed otherwise. Later that night, Emily stood at the window again, the corner outside quiet, as if mocking her. She whispered, "If he loved me, he'd be here," and the words froze on the glass. A message buzzed, "It's complicated." The phrase shredded everything left. Emily laughed once, hollow and jagged, before covering her mouth. She typed, "Complicated is just another word for leaving," but her thumb hovered. Outside, a lone taxi slowed, headlights flooding the wall, before pulling away. Emily said, "This is the twist, isn't it?" Her voice both question and answer. The radiator hissed like it had heard this story before. She leaned her forehead against the window, eyes burning. Emily whispered, "Then let me go," and the city kept moving without her. Wednesday dawned with her phone, clutched like a weapon she feared to use. Emily whispered, "Today I demand answers," though her stomach twisted in revolt. She dialed Daniel, and each ring hammered louder than her heartbeat. He answered with, "What now?" his tone carrying exhaustion instead of care. Emily said, "Tell me the truth about her," and her voice cracked under the weight. Silence dragged, then he said, "She's just someone I spend time with," and the phrase stabbed deeper than denial. Emily whispered, "You promised me forever," but her plea felt brittle. He sighed, "I didn't promise forever. I promised to try," and the ground shifted beneath her. Emily said, "Trying isn't showing her what should be mine," and tears blurred her vision. The radiator clicked, as if applauding the collapse. She pressed her palm flat to the table, grounding herself as the storm inside split her in two. By noon, Emily stormed through the city streets, anger replacing oxygen. She whispered, "He doesn't get to rewrite us," and her boots struck pavement like drums. Lucas met her outside a bookstore, concern etched deep in his eyes. Emily said, "He admitted she's someone," and the words tasted like acid. Lucas clenched his jaw, saying, "That's enough proof." She shook her head, replying, "Proof feels like poison, not freedom." Crowds surged past, each stranger appearing steadier than her. Emily said, "I wasted years," and the syllables split like glass underfoot. Lucas reached for her shoulder, whispering, "No, you invested in love," but he defaulted. The city roared with horns and chatter, drowning her silence. Emily tilted her face to the sky, whispering, "Why wasn't I enough?" though the clouds offered no answer. That evening, Daniel finally called, his voice carrying both guilt and distance. Emily steadied her breath before answering, "Say it to me directly." He sighed, "I care about you, but it's not the same anymore." Emily whispered, "Not the same is a death sentence disguised." He muttered, "I didn't mean to hurt you," and the lie hummed like static. Emily said, "You chose silence, and silence kills louder than knives." His pause was long enough to fracture her chest. Daniel said, "I can't do this long distance forever," and the words buried her years of waiting. She shouted, "You never planned to," startling herself with the volume. Her reflection in the window looked like someone unrecognizable. Emily whispered, "Then end it properly," and the call cut short, leaving her staring at her trembling hands. Emily met Lucas again that night, needing gravity to hold her steady. They sat on a bench beneath a flickering street lamp, words catching in the cold air. Emily said, "He ended it without ending it," and her voice quivered. Lucas said, "He left you long before this call," his tone blunt yet soft. She whispered, "Why didn't I see it?" and guilt rolled heavy. Lucas replied, "Because hope blinds sharper than lies." Emily pressed her palms together, whispering, "I begged him to choose me." Lucas shook his head. "You never needed begging, you deserved certainty." The silence stretched until the lamp buzzed again. Emily said, "So, this is the breaking point," and her chest tightened with release. Lucas placed a hand on her shoulder, saying, "Now it's the starting point." She breathed in, and for the first time, exhaled without waiting. Near midnight, Emily sat at the window once more, the corner below still empty. She whispered, "This is where it ends," though the ache refused to leave. The suitcase stood open, half filled with clothes that no longer carried purpose. She picked up her phone and typed, "Goodbye," then paused. Daniel's profile glowed, smiling in a world that excluded her. Emily whispered, "You won't steal my nights anymore," and pressed send. The message delivered instantly, final as a slammed door. She leaned back against the glass, her breath clouding the pain. The radiator hissed, recording this new truth in steady rhythm. Outside, snowflakes began to fall, soft yet unrelenting. Emily whispered, "I am done waiting," and the night seemed to listen. For the first time, the silence felt like freedom rather than punishment. Morning arrived like a quiet verdict, and Emily woke to a room that finally matched the truth. She didn't open the chat because endings do not improve when stared at. She brewed coffee and let the steam soften the hard corners in her chest. Emily said, "We start with breath," and she counted 4 in, 4 out, like rescue. The window still framed the same corner, but it no longer held jurisdiction. She wiped the glass and watched her own hand refuse to tremble. Lucas texted, "Breakfast," and relief rose like a small warm tide. Emily said, "Yes, but no postmortems," claiming a boundary out loud. She folded the hoodie he left once, then placed it in a donation box. The act felt like pulling a thorn without bleeding. Emily whispered, "You cannot haunt what you no longer own," and the apartment listened. She sipped the coffee and realized bitterness can be honest without being cruel. At the diner, Lucas slid into the booth with a look that said he came unarmed. He waited until her fork touched pancakes before speaking. Lucas said, "How's the air today?" And the gentleness almost undid her. Emily said, "Less heavy," and she felt the words choose her back. A notification flashed from Daniel, a long paragraph beginning with apology. Her pulse lifted, then steadied like a seasoned driver in rain. Emily said, "I won't read it here," and Lucas nodded with visible pride. She asked the server for more syrup, claiming sweetness without permission. Lucas said, "What do you want next?" and the question landed like a door opening. Emily answered, "Sleep, work, my life," and the list sounded complete. They planned a weekend museum run, a future measured in present tense. When she finally peeked at the message, she archived it like a receipt for a return she would not make. Back home, Emily performed a tender inventory of the life she had kept on hold. She gathered ticket stubs, old boarding passes, and the Polaroid that once taught her hope. Emily said, "Thank you for what you were," and placed them in a shoebox. She tied it with kitchen twine, not as a shrine, but as closure that breathes. The suitcase finally zipped without protest, ready for storage, not escape. She changed the bedsheets and exhaled at the crisp sound of corners snapping tight. "Up," Daniel called, and the phone danced across the table like a moth to heat. Emily let it ring to voicemail, and did not fracture. She recorded a new greeting that sounded like someone she wanted to know. Emily said, "If it's important, write it simply," offering him the mercy of clarity. The radiator ticked approval, patient and even. She slid the box onto a shelf and felt the room grow inches wider. In the afternoon, Emily met her mother for tea, because reconciliation starts close to home. Her mother poured carefully, as if steadiness could be served. Mother said, "I worried you would disappear into waiting," and the sentence held both apology and steel. Emily said, "I almost did," and watched the truth clear the air. They traded recipes and small stories, proof that love can be practical. Emily said, "I'm applying for the fellowship you mentioned," and pride replaced pity in her mother's eyes. A neighbor arrived with mail and a rumor, but gossip found no purchase here. Her mother pressed a scarf into her hands, not for warmth, but blessing. Emily said, "I am done with contingency plans," and the table accepted the vow. They washed the cups together, sleeves rolled, wrists wet. On the walk back, she noticed the sky looked freshly ironed. For once, she did not glance toward the corner. Evening unspooled without ceremony, and Emily walked a different route home on purpose. She passed the boutique, the musician's corner, and the bakery that once tasted like hope. Emily said, I will let good things find me moving. And her stride answered, yes. A final message from Daniel arrived, careful and late, asking for one more call. She stopped beneath a streetlight and read every word without drowning. Emily replied, I wish you well, and felt grief loosen its grip like a hand released. She blocked the thread, not in anger, but in service of tomorrow. Lucas texted a museum time and a smile, and she saved the hour. Emily said, I forgive us, and the sentence surprised her with softness. Snow returned, light as breath, and the city wore it without complaint. She reached her building and looked at the window from the sidewalk. The corner remained empty, and for once that emptiness felt like room. Thursday morning unfolded without weight, sunlight washing her room in a clarity she had never felt before. Emily brewed coffee, and the silence felt less like punishment, more like privacy. She whispered, This is mine. And the mug steamed in agreement. No unread messages blinked at her, the absence was clean. She opened her laptop and filled out the fellowship form she once shelved, each keystroke an act of reclamation. Emily said, I will not anchor myself to absence. And the line settled like a law. A scarf from her mother rested on the chair, its pattern more grounding than memory. She checked the calendar. October no longer circled, blank but inviting. Emily whispered, The future doesn't need conditions, and her chest lightened. The radiator clicked, steady, like a metronome teaching her a new rhythm. She sipped coffee, smiled, and realized the window was only glass now, not prophecy. Later that day, Emily and Lucas walked through the museum, their voices low under marble ceilings. Lucas said, You look lighter, and she laughed, surprised by the truth. Emily replied, I feel like my lungs finally work. They stood before a painting of a storm, waves rising, ships breaking, but her eyes found the light piercing through. Emily said, This is what survival looks like, and Lucas nodded without a word. A group of students passed, buzzing with wonder, and their noise made her smile instead of ache. She pressed closer to the frame, noticing brushstrokes she had missed before. Lucas whispered, You deserve a gallery of mornings like this. She whispered back, I will build them. Their reflection in the glass looked like two people learning to stand in the present. The museum air smelled faintly of polish and history, grounding her in now. Evening settled as Emily sat in her parents' living room, the warmth of tea filling her palms. Her father asked, Are you okay now? His voice cautious but sincere. Emily said, I'm more than okay, I'm free, and the sentence rang solid. Her mother smiled, relief softening her sternness. Emily shared her fellowship plans, and pride bloomed where doubt once stood. Her sister teased, No more ghost love stories, and Emily laughed without sting. The house hummed with simple conversation, the kind that doesn't break. Emily whispered, I thought love meant holding on, and her mother replied, Sometimes it means letting go. She nodded, absorbing the wisdom like medicine. Clock ticked, steady as her pulse. She leaned back into the couch, realizing family wasn't just background weight, it was her foundation. That night, Emily stood outside her building, snow drifting in lazy spirals. She whispered, This is my city too. And the words felt earned. The corner remained empty, but emptiness no longer cut, it expanded. She walked slowly, savoring the crunch beneath her boots. A taxi rolled past, headlights bright, but her heart did not leap. Emily said, I will not measure love by who turns the corner. And the snow agreed. A stranger smiled at her in passing, and she returned it, small but certain. The bakery lights glowed, warm against the frost, and she thought of tomorrow's bread instead of yesterday's ghosts. She exhaled, watching breath curl upward and vanish into sky. Emily whispered, I am finally here, and the night wrapped around her like a quiet promise. Back at the window, Emily sat with the lights off, the city a moving painting outside. She whispered, This is closure. And her reflection met her eyes without fear. Her phone lay silent on the table, no longer the center of her orbit. She picked up her pen and wrote one final line in her journal. I stopped waiting. Emily said, I kept myself alive, and her chest expanded with pride. The radiator clicked steady, the apartment carrying no secrets. A car did turn the corner this time, headlights spilling across her wall, but she did not move. She smiled instead, whispering, Not for me, and let the lights pass. The silence that followed was not absence, but peace. Emily whispered, and that was the last time his name ever lit up my phone. The city pulsed, indifferent and alive, and she matched its rhythm at last.